Okay, so here's the deal. I've been to a lot of swing parties. Like a lot. Think of it as my unofficial hobby. Some people crochet, others collect stamps, and I accidentally collect bizarre stories of awkward encounters, unexpected messes, and the kind of absurdity that can only happen when you throw a group of strangers into one room with dim lighting and questionable intentions. You'd think I'd have seen it all by now. Trust me, I thought so too. But there's always that one party that takes the cake. And let me tell you about mine. It started like any other Saturday night. My best friend, Clara, my partner in crime and constant source of questionable ideas, sent me a text. Swing party tonight. It's gonna be unforgettable. Now, when Clara uses the word unforgettable, it could mean anything. The last unforgettable event involved a hot tub, a malfunctioning bubble machine, and me accidentally spraying wine on someone's bald head during an overly enthusiastic laugh. But I figured, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Spoiler alert, a lot. I met Clara outside the venue, a grand old house that looked like it belonged to someone who made questionable choices in decor but owned way too many candles. Clara was grinning ear to ear, which was both reassuring and terrifying. "This one's going to be different," she said. "Trust me." The crowd was the usual eclectic mix. Middle-aged couples looking like they just stepped off a cruise, some younger, overly enthusiastic newbies, and a guy wearing sunglasses indoors, there's always one. Felt normal, too normal. I should have sensed the storm brewing, but hindsight is 20/20, and I was too busy raiding the snack table like I hadn't eaten in a week. And then I noticed them. A group of older men. And by older, I mean they looked like they'd been carded at a Civil War reenactment. White hair, suspenders, and a certain determination in their eyes that said, "We may not remember where we parked, but we'll remember this night." Clara naturally was thrilled. "Oh my God, it's like a niche episode of Golden Girls. Come on, let's mingle." Before I could protest, she dragged me right into the lion's den, or in this case, the grandpa's lair. One of them introduced himself as Walter, and his handshake was way too firm. "Ladies, it's so nice to see some fresh faces. We're here to, spice things up," he said with a toothy grin that was 90% denture. Another, named Gus, winked at me. "I hope you like a man with experience." I was halfway between laughing and dry heaving when Clara leaned over and whispered, "This is hilarious. We have to stay." So we stayed. Because Clara's logic is as airtight as a leaky raft. What followed was an evening of the most absurd events I've ever witnessed. One of the grandpas whipped out a harmonica during a slow song. Another started handing out Werther's originals to set the mood. And then there was the incident with the sour milk smell. I'll spare you the gory details for now, but let's just say, never underestimate the power of expired dairy in a poorly ventilated room. By the end of the night, I was clutching Clara, both of us laughing hysterically and gagging at the same time. "This is the worst party ever," I said. "And also the best." But that was only the beginning. Let's just say things went downhill faster than a grocery cart on a steep hill. You know that feeling when you're on a roller coaster, and you realize you might have made a terrible mistake, but it's too late to get off? Yeah, that was me, except the roller coaster was powered by prune juice and decades of misplaced confidence. Clara, of course, was in her element. While I was busy looking for the nearest exit, she was chatting it up with Walter, who was regaling her with tales of his days as a dancing king back in the 70s. I couldn't tell if she was genuinely entertained or just morbidly curious, but she had that mischievous glint in her eye that usually spelled trouble. Meanwhile, Gus had somehow latched onto me like I was the last life raft on a sinking ship. "You know," he said, leaning in conspiratorially, "we used to call this the golden hour. Back in my day, this was when things really heated up." Golden hour. Sir, this was more like golden acres gone wild. Before I could respond, he slid me a glass of something he called Walter's special brew. It smelled like regret and bad decisions, but when you're stuck in a room with grandpas serenading each other on harmonicas, you figure, why not? Big mistake. The drink hit me like a truck full of mystery herbs and questionable intentions. My throat burned, my eyes watered, and I was pretty sure I saw my life flash before my eyes. "What is this?" I wheezed, clutching my chest dramatically. Walter beamed. "It's a family recipe. Secret ingredient is fermented beet juice." Fermented what now? I was still recovering when the night took a bizarre turn. One of the older gentlemen, let's call him Harold, decided it was time for a game. And not just any game. He wanted to play Twister. Yes, Twister. The man was 70 if he was a day. And here he was, enthusiastically unrolling a mat like we were in the middle of a third-grade sleepover. "Right hand blue," someone shouted, and before I knew it, the room descended into chaos. It wasn't just chaos. It was a geriatric war zone. Joints popped. Ankles cracked. Someone's hip made a sound that I'm pretty sure violated the Geneva Conventions. Walter ended up sprawled over Clara. Gus was stuck mid-lunge, and Harold. Well, Harold had the time of his life. And then came the sour milk incident. It started innocently enough. Someone, I don't know who, and frankly I don't want to know, brought out a tray of what they called special snacks. One bite in, and the room was filled with the unmistakable stench of dairy gone wrong. "Is that curdled milk?" Clara gagged, clutching her stomach. Walter sniffed the air and shrugged. "That's just the cheese dip. It's aged to perfection." "Aged?" "Sir, that smell was less perfection and more biohazard." The next 15 minutes were a blur of coughing, gagging, and me trying not to pass out while someone frantically waved a harmonica like it was an air purifier. Somehow we survived. Barely. By the time we made it to the safety of the porch, Clara and I were gasping for air, laughing so hard we could barely stand. "That," she said between giggles, "was a disaster. And also amazing." I wiped tears from my eyes. "Clara, I swear if you ever drag me to something like this again." She grinned. "Oh, come on. You loved it." "Did I, though?" You'd think that after the Twister incident and the cursed cheese platter, the night couldn't get any weirder. I thought the same, but apparently the party gods had other plans. Clara, of course, was thriving. She was back inside, debating with Harold about the finer points of disco dancing, while I was outside trying to cleanse my lungs of sour milk fumes. "Just breathe," I muttered to myself. "You're not going to die at a grandpa party." But as I stepped back inside, I realized I'd underestimated their enthusiasm and my will to survive. The first thing I noticed was the karaoke machine. Who brought it? No clue. But someone had plugged it in, and suddenly Walter was belting out, "Can't get enough of your love, babe," like Barry White had possessed him. His voice. Not bad. His dance moves. Terrifying. Clara was egging him on, waving a sequined scarf she'd somehow acquired. "Go, Walter. Hit that falsetto." He did. The chandelier did not survive. Walter's epic performance ended with a slightly awkward, slightly horrifying moment when he tried to slide across the floor on his knees but forgot he was wearing orthopedic shoes. Instead of a dramatic finish, he face-planted into Gus's special brew cooler. The crowd went silent. Then Harold, ever the optimist, raised his glass and shouted, "Encore." As if that wasn't enough, the night took another unexpected turn when someone suggested a memory lane fashion show. Now, I'm all for a good throwback, but these guys didn't just bring out the retro outfits. They brought out their original retro outfits. Watching Harold strut in a powder blue leisure suit was funny. Watching Gus attempt to squeeze into bell-bottoms that clearly hadn't been touched since Nixon was president. Priceless. By the time someone tried to recreate the Saturday Night Fever pose, I was laughing so hard I nearly fell off the couch. And then came the dance-off. I swear, there is nothing on this planet more chaotic than a room full of determined seniors trying to one-up each other on the dance floor. It started innocently. Walter did a surprisingly smooth cha-cha. Gus followed with something that vaguely resembled a waltz, and then Harold broke out the robot. That point Clara lost it. "This is the greatest night of my life," she shouted, doubling over in laughter. But then Harold decided to up the ante. "Watch this," he said, pulling out a pair of roller skates. I barely had time to yell, "Oh, Harold," before he took off across the room, legs wobbling like a baby deer on ice. To his credit, He made it halfway before taking out the snack table, 2 chairs, and a very startled Gus. The grand finale came when someone, bless their chaotic soul, thought it'd be a good idea to light sparklers indoors. Within seconds, there was a minor panic involving a lace curtain, a bottle of champagne, and an enthusiastic rendition of "We Didn't Start the Fire." Spoiler alert, they did. Clara and I decided it was time to make our escape. As we stumbled out the door, tears streaming down our faces from laughing so hard, Walter shouted after us, "See you at the next one, ladies." "Next one." Clara wheezed. "You couldn't pay me enough." "Speak for yourself," I muttered. "I need a decade to recover." We collapsed into my car, still giggling like teenagers who just survived their first house party. "You know," Clara said, catching her breath, "this might actually top the time with the hot tub and the bubble machine." Groaned. "Let's never speak of this again." Clara and I were safely in my car, gasping for air between fits of uncontrollable laughter. You know that kind of laugh where your stomach hurts, and you start making those wheezy sounds like a tea kettle? Yeah, that was us. I thought we were finally free of the madness, but of course the grandpas weren't done with us yet. As I started the engine, the front door of the house burst open and Walter, still clutching his harmonica, came hobbling out. "Ladies, you forgot your goodie bags." "Goodie bags?" Clara, ever the optimist, perked up. "Oh, cute. Maybe it's snacks." It was not snacks. Walter handed us a paper bag filled with, brace yourselves, homemade prune tarts, a mini bottle of that god-awful special brew, and what I think was a crocheted coaster shaped like a heart. "For the memories," he said with a wink. Clara, bless her, was gracious. "Thank you so much, Walter. We'll treasure this forever." I, on the other hand, was silently praying for a lightning strike to take me out. We finally peeled out of the driveway, the headlights cutting through the dark as we sped away. "Okay," Clara said, her voice trembling with barely contained laughter. "Admit it. That was amazing." "Clara," I said, gripping the steering wheel, "I'm pretty sure I now have post-twister sour milk disorder." That set us off again, and for the next 10 minutes, the car was filled with nothing but cackling and the occasional, "Did you see Harold's skates?" By the time we got back to my apartment, we were wiped out. Clara flopped onto the couch while I rummaged through the fridge for anything, to cleanse the memory of Walter's special brew from my soul. I settled on orange juice, but even that tasted faintly of regret. "You know," Clara said, holding up her prune tart like it was an artifact from an ancient civilization, "this is probably the weirdest thing I've ever brought home from a party." I snorted. "Speak for yourself. I've still got that sour milk smell burned into my nostrils." And that's when it hit me. Taste. That horrible, tangy sour milk taste that seemed to creep up the back of my throat every time I thought about the party. It was like a ghost haunting my taste buds. For weeks I couldn't shake it. Every time I walked past the dairy aisle at the grocery store, I had flashbacks. Clara, of course, thought this was hilarious. "You survived though," she'd say, grinning like the Cheshire Cat. "And you got a story out of it. Totally worth it." Was it though? I hadn't touched cheese dip since. And that's why, my friends, I officially retired from swing parties. Clara still goes occasionally. She says nothing has ever topped the Grandpa Gala, her words, not mine. But I'm content to live vicariously through her stories. Besides, every now and then, I'll catch a faint whiff of sour milk or hear the soft notes of a harmonica, and I'm instantly transported back to that night of chaos. And that's more than enough excitement for one lifetime. You'd think that after leaving that house of horrors, or hilarity, depending on who you ask, life would return to normal. But no. The events of that fateful night had a ripple effect that I'm still dealing with. It's like the universe decided. You went to one ridiculous party. Let's make sure you never forget it. Started small. For example, I couldn't eat pudding anymore. Don't ask me why. There was just something about the texture that brought back the smell of that sour milk cheese dip. Every time I saw a cup of vanilla pudding, my brain screamed, "Don't do it." So now pudding's out. Thanks, Walter. And then there were the dreams. Yes, dreams. I had one where I was stuck in an endless game of Twister, except every time I moved, Harold was there on his roller skates, cheering me on while I struggled to avoid a landmine of prune tarts. I woke up in a cold sweat. Clara, of course, found this hysterical. "You've got party PSD," she teased. "Post-traumatic swing disorder." "You're not helping," I grumbled, swatting her with a couch pillow. The real breaking point, though, came at work. I just wrapped up a meeting when my coworker Amanda walked in with snacks for the team. "I made a cheese platter," she announced, all proud of herself. Froze. The room felt smaller. My palms got clammy. And the moment she peeled back the lid, the smell hit me like a truck. It wasn't bad cheese, don't get me wrong. It was probably delightful to a normal person. But for me, it was like Harold and his buddies were back, haunting me from beyond the twister mat. I did the only logical thing. I ran straight to the break room fridge, where I stuck my head inside and pretended to be organizing yogurt cups until the coast was clear. Even Clara started to feel bad for me after that. "Okay," she said one night as we sipped wine on my couch, with no snacks obviously. "Maybe we overdid it. But at least you got a story. And you'll always have the goodie bag." I shot her a look. "The prune tarts are compost. The coaster is under my cat's water bowl. And the special brew, I gave it to the neighbor's teenage son. I figured it might scare him straight." "Okay, fair," Clara admitted, trying and failing to look contrite. "But here's the thing. As much as I'd like to say I regret going, I don't. Sure, I'll never look at cheese dip or harmonicas the same way. And I occasionally gag when I hear the opening chords of "Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe." But that night gave me a story. Hilarious story. It also gave me a new life rule. If anyone over 60 invites you to a party, make sure you ask very specific follow-up questions. Because sometimes, unforgettable is just code for you'll be haunted forever.